Hello, hello, hello. We are just going to give people a few seconds, even not minutes, to join us. But thank you so much if you are joining us live this afternoon. I was going to say this morning. It's not this afternoon. Um, so this is going to be the very first LinkedIn Live. I am Iowa Bass, and I'm a marketing consultant, speaker, and trainer, and I work particularly with architects and engineers.
And I'm Stacey Meadwell. I'm a former property journalist turned content creator, media trainer and moderator working with businesses in the built environment sector.
Fantastic. Just so that we know that people are online, if you are watching us either on LinkedIn or on YouTube, if you could just put in a comment, I guess, how's your January going or something like that, or if you're a newbie here, or if you've watched us before, just let us know. If you could put something in the comments, that'd be great, and we can see that we are actually broadcasting live to you all. So that would be great. Thank you very much. Anyway, so let's kick on with the proceedings for today. So today is all about, I guess, our predictions for this year, really, isn't it, Stacey, in our kind of own content marketing way.
Yeah.
And I think the key thing for us is the thing around social media and digital marketing have always been things that, I mean, I love, but also I know are exceedingly tough to do on a kind of day-to-day basis. There's a lot happening. There's so many changes that you really can't control. And I mean, if you just even look at Instagram over the weekend, you know, in terms of changing from squares to portrait and all this kind of stuff and new features, it's never ending. So what we wanted to do was kind of talk about what's happening in the kind of social media landscape, but also the media landscape. So, you know, things like in our industry with, you know, e.g., are they returning in a different format? What's happening there? And other publications as well, literally just disappearing. When did you last buy a subscription, let alone really read it, is one of the questions we had. So when I started out in PR, actually, which was my first job 24 years ago, you know, magazines were really thick. They were passed around the office. Everybody read them. They were the gospel. And I think it's quite different now as the market's become a lot more fragmented and dispersed. So, and especially when you couple with that with the fact that people have less time, less attention span, and are basically bombarded with messages wherever we go. So I think that's why we're looking at content and saying, all right, what else could you be trying out? What else could you be doing, I guess, to cut through? So that's the whole point of the session today. Go on, Stace.
Well, before I speak, I just want to say hi, Ruth. Good to see you, and thank you for being our coach yesterday. When Ruth was sat in on our planning meeting yesterday, so she got a fly on the wall of how we plan these lives. So hi, Ruth, and hello, Martin, who's first time watching. I hope you find it useful. So yeah, as Io has said, the landscape is changing, and there are more options than ever before, and it can be just a little bit overwhelming where to focus. We've been going through some of the tips, added our own ideas, but this is all with the backdrop of B2B and the built environment, because that's our market. So the ideas and the examples that we're going to give off for this particular market. We hope that the areas that we highlight will help you stand out, will help you reach new audiences, and hopefully not run you ragged.
This actually is really important to hear. So anyway, so we want to hear from you, obviously. So if you have any thoughts or comments, please put them in the comments. That makes sense. And then we'll share them on the screen and have a discussion around them. Plus, if you have any questions, put them in the comments as well. And then we'll do that. And we look forward to having a conversation with you all.
Great. So let's kick off. The first area I mentioned about not running yourself ragged. So I'm going to start with that. And it's about doing more with less. As I already said, there is so much content out there. AI is also making it much easier to produce content. And that can be good, but it also can be bad. There is an increasing amount of, dare I say it, AI slop out there, which I don't think is going to put you in a good position. I'm not saying don't use AI, but just use it wisely. Producing more faster is not necessarily a good thing. I think doing more with less, for me, this is about creating fewer bits of content, but creating better bits of content, putting your time and effort into what I like to call hero pieces of content that you can then do lots more with, rather than creating new all the time, and the stress that can bring. So when I'm talking about hero pieces of content, what am I talking about? So this could be at one end of the spectrum, white papers, reports. It could be a quarterly or a monthly, carefully researched and written thought leader series. It could be an event, it could be a content-led event, whether that's a panel or a round table or some other sort of format of event that produces discussion and content. There are also podcasts. We talked about panels and podcasts on our previous live back in November, so do check out that episode, because we talked exclusively about these two areas. It could be video. Video is obviously very hot, but you could do a video series looking at a particular area, and also things like this, LinkedIn Lives. Not that difficult to do. It could be a series. But the point is that with the right planning, you can use these hero pieces of content, you can cut them up, repurpose them, change the format, and turn them into lots of different pieces of content. So rather than creating something new, coming up with new ideas all the time, make the most of what you are creating, create better, but do more with it. I'm going to hand over to you, Aya, before I waffle on anymore.
Well done, Stace, well done. So yeah, I think that whole thing about, AI slop is quite an interesting one as well. And I think it's funny, isn't it? Right now, we're seeing a lot of really bad content. So the good stuff is actually standing out. So I think that whole point of making sure that what you put out is high quality and to the best that you can do it. So I know, for example, when sometimes when I see videos, and like even now on like where LinkedIn's now pushing video, right? And I see people and they're just using like a standard cover for their video. It's like, actually, no, you need a title so that I can stop the scroll, so that I can stop and you can capture my attention. Don't just use a standard, this is just our logo. It's just those little things, or adding captions, because most people watch without sound. So there's little things that you can do to make your content better. So I think that's kind of one of the key things for me, is like just making it to the best that it can be. So it really, really works hard. So I think that's definitely one part, and just avoiding AI slop. I've got no problems with using AI. I use it myself, but it's about how you use it and using it to make things better rather than just churning out slop, as Stacey said. I think the other thing about doing more with less. So if you are, for example, producing a piece of thought leader, then also just thinking, right, how else can I use this piece of content? So I think one of the key things for me is, if you're going to write a thought leadership piece somewhere, who are the 10 clients you can share that with who would be interested in it? Like just using those little things and thinking, how do I get more bang for my buck? And that could be business development bang for my buck. It doesn't have to be about content that's actually shared on a website. So I think it's actually looking at something going, okay, how else can I sweat this? What else can I use this for? How else can this help my business and my marketing in general? And I think that's the bit where, when I've been working with a couple of architectural firms and things like that, I'm like, okay, so which 10 people are you going to send this article to? And then you start to have that, and then what? They've got coffees, and it happens like that. So I think it's using content to kind of fuel those conversations, your business development, and, basically getting you in front of the people that you want to be in front of. Another area that I think is quite important is actually, like, most platforms are going towards pay to play, which is one of the things I'm going to keep saying all year. Sorry. But I do think there is this whole thing about, you can use advertising to really, really target in on that audience that you really want to talk to. If you want to talk to housing associations, great. Where are those business development people? Where are their regeneration managers and all of those people? You've got a great thought leadership piece on housing. Why not, put a couple of £100 behind that as a thought leader ad and target those people? And you can do that straight away. And then you're getting in front of that right audience straight away. There, it's targeted. So I think there's all of that kind of thing that we can start to be more strategic with our content in terms of how we market it and take it out to people as well. So it's not just one and done. How else can I take this out? And I think, like you said, I think it's about the planning at the start, thinking about producing this piece of content. How am I going to get the most out of it? And that distribution part is really key.
And I would add to that, getting the most out of it is think about how you can convert it to different types of content. So, can you turn video, you can easily turn into written content. Audio, you can do the same. Panel events, you can video. So you've got the live event, you can then record it. You can then turn those videos into shorter clips. There's a lot that you can do.
And it's that planning. It's that front end planning, right?
Yes. And if you plan right from the start how you're going to then repurpose that content. And the other final thing I would add before we move on is that take a look at other content that you have created. Take a look at your back catalogue. Is there something that you can repurpose that is still relevant, that you can maybe update, that you can then reuse? But the point being is you don't have to be creating new all the time. Just think about creating really good pieces, but doing a lot with them.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I'm a marketeer, and I have to admit, it's a busman's holiday to create stuff that's new. And I'm always like, come on, let's change this. And it's just like, actually, I don't need to. Stop. It's like, we can do this. It's like, you don't need to do stuff you have. Anyway, so on to our next thing that we think you should be thinking about when it comes to content this year. So I think one of my watchwords for this year is collaborations, collabs, and communities. So collabs and communities. So that is about, I guess we don't work in silo anymore. People are craving connection with people. And it's just trying to find ways that you can kind of connect with people both online and in person. And I think it's a way for you to get your message out, but also to get your message out via third parties that aren't always yourself. So who can you partner with? If you're a design team, is there stuff that you can do together as a collaboration? And it's about understanding the networks that you can tap into who can then help you to amplify your message to your target audience. So who is it in those communities and in your networks who can help to amplify your message? Who can really help to move the needle forward for you? And it's finding those people who are that kind of, I guess, that match who can spark something and make things happen. And I think that is something that we don't necessarily do as much as we could. And it's quite interesting at the moment because I'm doing quite a lot of stuff on Instagram, which isn't my favourite platform, but it never has been. But what's really interesting is that at the moment, anything that I do as a collab, so I'm doing an event next month and I'm working with a graphic designer and we're partnering on it. And anything we do as a collab just goes off the scale. So, that's the type of thing that these platforms are going, yeah, it's great, get them to work together. And collabs, you can actually tag them as a collaborator. So it's on their feed and your feed. And I think it's things like that where you go, how can I kind of amplify this voice? I'll come in, I've got more to say on this one, but you go for it for a bit, Stacey.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I've got an Instagram example as well, but I just wanted to come back to your original point, in your intro, and you were talking about, media and the sort of, decline in certain senses of trade publications and that sort of thing. And they used to be who you would collab with in some sense, when you'd get Thought Leader published those, that was almost like a form of collaboration. It was earned media. This I think is the new version of that. My Instagram, now I don't have a work Instagram account. I have an Instagram account for my hobby, which is theatre. I'm a theatre blogger. And exactly the same, same as what happened to you, IO. I did a video interview with a theatre director. And when I posted a clip on Instagram, I did a collab with their theatre production company and I got 60% more views than if I just posted it on my own channel. Because if you do a collab on Instagram, it posts it in both of your feeds. So I think that it's really powerful. I'm not sure. I mean, I've got examples of where there's collabs, I would see a collab as, panels, podcasts, being guests, those kind of things, but making the most of actually amplifying the audiences. So if there's a popular industry podcast, can you be a guest on that? Can you then harness the audience of that podcast, which gives you bigger reach?
I think that's some of it. There's more direct ways you can do it. So for example, if you are producing a report on, I don't know, what's going to be the real estate trend for 2025 in, I don't know, New York, and you might turn around and go, actually, who are the key people of influence in that area? And you could circulate that report to them earlier beforehand. And then you could agree that they would actually share their thoughts on that on the day when you launch that report. That's a collaboration. You know, and I think it's thinking through logically, who are those people? And you can take that out and you can have those conversations and build those relationships. And I think, you know, I've done a piece of work where I was writing a marketing plan about 3D printed concrete beams, as you do. And actually, I love that plan. But what was really interesting, I did a whole thing about a whole load of research on who could move the needle in terms of the debate on concrete, sustainable concrete. I know, this is what I do. But it was really interesting because, like, actually there were a few people that were talking on this topic, talking about it, and they had a following and they had people that listened to them. So it's like, if you're looking for a pilot project, those people are the ones who can help you get it. So do you know what I mean? So it's kind of looking around that and going, right, actually, who has the communities that I need to tap into, who have, you know, which people, but also which communities and societies and industries and associations have that community that I can tap into that will help me to amplify my message. So it's kind of thinking a bit more laterally, but I do think there is that's a huge opportunity because nobody's really doing that. And you're like, it doesn't have to be ridiculously expensive. I know earlier this week I went to architecture talk and Stephen Drew was talking from the Architecture Social, and he'd done a collab with a graduate, an architectural graduate, who's got a huge following on Instagram, and she did a couple of like sponsored kind of collaboration posts for him, and he literally got thousands of followers for his Architecture Social from the back of that, from her endorsement. So I think there's different ways that we can do these things, and they don't have to cost a ton of money, but they can be highly effective if you find that community and the person who has, I guess, the key to open that community. So yeah, that's one of the things that I think we don't do enough of, but we should.
And I want to come in on communities there, and this is something we talked about yesterday. I was when we were planning this live, which was micro influencing. And you can become like a micro influencer in your own right. And I think one of the examples of this is, and I'm going to use Instagram, but also LinkedIn as an example for this, is when conversations start happening in your below your content that are independent of you. So you become like the place that people go to talk about stuff, and people are commenting on each other's content. This happens on my Instagram account. I do a Sunday theatre question every Sunday, and people will are obviously reading the comments, reading people's answers, and they start having conversations about each other's answers. And I love the fact that I've in some way kind of set that up, but that's happened independently. I haven't made that happen. That's just happened. It happens a bit on LinkedIn. You know, it's happened once or twice on my content, but I've had it happen where I've commented on someone else's content and then someone's responded, who's not the author, has responded to my content. And the benefits of doing this is it's visibility. The more activity there is on your content, the more it's pushed. The more is it signaled to the algorithm that it's used, people are interested in it. So it makes it more visible. And if you can become the place where those conversations are happening, people will gravitate towards you, and you know, they want to see your content. They want to see what's being discussed in the comments, and there is association there. It's not something you can necessarily engineer easily. My tips would be encourage people to comment. Don't post and ghost. Reply to people's comments. Show that you're available in the comments and that this is a conversation. You know, ask questions, present options, present ideas for people to discuss. You know, and make sure you're writing in an open way that gets the conversation going.
Yeah, and I think micro influencers is an interesting one, and I think we were having this debate yesterday that are we micro influencers, didn't we? I thought that's where you were going, but you didn't. And
Sorry.
but I tell you what was interesting. It wasn't last year, the year before. I did a talk for architects in the US, and what was interesting was when we spoke to the editor, it was their magazine from Architizer magazine, and he said that whenever either myself or Nikita Morel, who we did this talk with on storytelling, whenever we posted, they could see that there would be a jump in people booking onto the webinars. So like he was like, we can correlate it. And I was like, oh yeah, that's quite interesting. But again, it's just like, you know, people are like, oh, we know what they're saying, and we agree with it, and stuff like that, and we trust what they're doing. So I do think there is this whole kind of influencer thing. You can just talk about some comments, Dave.
Yeah. So, oh, hang on, let's scroll past. I'm just reading James's comment here. Yeah, being deliberately provocative and controversial. I mean, I think you have to think of brands.
Yeah.
Your brand and your personal brand. And also, do you want to get a reputation for someone who's just saying outrageous stuff just to sort of
just cause?
just cause. So I think you can present different ideas. You can be, you know, have a grown-up conversation. I think you can present different ideas. You know, it might be that there's something that you are debating, you know, that you yourself don't know the complete answer, that maybe there's stuff that you want to get people's opinion on, you know, and highlight the nuances in discussions and debates. And I think just be grown up about it. So yeah, I think there is a danger in being, you know, it's being controversial for the sake of being controversial.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that, because I do think the whole thing about, there are some people who are just there, and you know, they're just there for a fight, and it just puts me off personally. It just means that I just block them, and I think if that's what you want your brand to be, then that's entirely up to you, but it doesn't mean that I need that on my feed. That's my own personal take on that. So I think you have to be kind of mindful of, I guess, what your personal brand is and what you stand for and what matters to you, and how much you want to be, I guess, controversial. There's certain things I will stand up for and I believe in, but am I going to sit there and just try and annoy people? Which some people do that, and that's their strategy.
It's all in the tone of the tone that you use, you know, in how you kind of couch these. I think you can, you know, people are, I think, particularly with LinkedIn, people are interested in a discussion. You know, if the way you frame it, you know, if you're going in gunning for a fight, then you will get a fight. But I think if you're saying, you know, look, this is something I've come across, you know, what do you think about this? These are the pros and cons of it. I see them. What do you think?
Yeah.
There's ways of couching it without sort of, you know, being someone that's just about getting those, you know, riling everybody up. Shall we move on? Because we've got 8 minutes left. Shall we?
Fantastic. So the final one's your one.
Oh, this is personal brand and storytelling. People who know me will know that this is something that I bang on about, and it kind of relates back to what we were talking earlier about there being so much more AI generated content and so much more content generally. Personality, people, being human, these are all really good ways of standing out from the crowd, particularly from a personal branding point of view. There is only one you, and there's only, you know, your experiences are, you know, unique. You've experienced things in a certain way, and that is unique to you. I mean, for as long as I've worked in property, which is a very long time, it's always been it's 25 more years. It's always been described as a people industry. And property is a people industry. You always hear it, but that is never, ever, or very rarely reflected in content that comes out. It ends up being very dry and very devoid of emotion. And I'll come on to I've got a couple of examples, and I'll come on to the reasons why it can help elevate your content in a moment. But a couple of examples. There was a post I saw recently. It was a business that had been set up and built up over sort of, I think, 7 or 8 years, and it was bought by a much bigger company. And the MD did a post sort of announcing the acquisition, and it could have been very sort of like, we're delighted to announce that we have been bought by blah blah blah. But instead, they took a different tack. And yes, they did it was a celebratory post celebrating the fact that, you know, they had details of the deal and what it meant for the business, which was all good. But they talked about the journey that they'd been on to get to that point. And they highlighted the fact that it's not, yes, they've had 8 years in business and they got to a point where they were successful enough to be bought out by a bigger company. But the path to success is never straight, and it's never smooth. And they highlighted, all the things that had gone right, but also the things that had gone wrong. And it immediately made this human, it made it stand out. It made it interesting because it was talking about the realities, and it was still celebrating the deal, but it just made it so much more interesting than the usual deals that you would announce. And the other example I've got, which Ruth reminded me of yesterday, so thank you very much, Ruth. This was a post I saw. It was from last year, and it was the CEO of a new business, and they did a post about the new CEO and what their first week was like. But rather than the usual, yes, and I've been meeting all the teams, and the usual stuff that you would imagine coming from a CEO's LinkedIn post, they talked about how nervous they'd been and how they felt on their first day. And it immediately made them human. It made them approachable. It made it relatable, because it's like, yeah, even though I'm a CEO, I get nervous. I'm joining a new company. I'm coming in as the leader. And it was nerve wracking, and it stood out as a result. And I think setting out these kind of human what it means to be a human working in business. We all have our trials and tribulations and problems. You don't have to overshare, but it shows that these are real people, and it makes them relatable. And I think it warms me to these people, because they're showing, look, it's great, we've got this amazing success, but actually it's not easy, and we've had our problems, and we've made our mistakes along the way, and we can all learn from these things. Sorry, I'll shut up now, Io. Sorry.
I think there is something around the whole personal brand. People do business with people, which is the thing everyone keeps saying at the moment. So I mean, even like when you look at LinkedIn in terms of employee advocacy, people are like 10 times more likely to believe something that's said by a person than a company. So you've got all of that in terms of, if you want your message to resonate with people, it's that. But I also think, based on some of the things that you've said, Stacey, I think the reason that people stick to the dry stuff is because it's what's always been done. And that's the way it's always been. And I think we're a very traditional industry, and you look at it, and in a way I'm seeing more of a changing of the guard. So you've got the new CEO that you've just mentioned there, who's coming in and actually talking about his feelings, where you've got the old school, which is about, I've made £100 million. We're getting a change of the guard. And I think there are new, more softer, more human ways of communicating coming in. And I guess it's depending on where you feel comfortable with that. And I think for some people, that's going to be little steps, right?
Yeah.
Start to post a bit about what I'm doing, share a bit more, see how I feel about it. And I think, because it's quite interesting, so I've done some work in the past few weeks where I was working for somebody who's in a senior level. And for me, one of the things was actually, I couldn't suggest going down the being more feeling, because actually the people that they were wanting to emulate was a bit different. Do you know what I mean? It was like, you kind of sit there and I was looking at a couple of different level people, and I was like, actually, this is a generational thing. And as soon as you see that, then you're like, actually, this is where she'll feel comfortable, and this is where this person feels comfortable. And you kind of, you need to bring that into the whole debate. So personal brand, I think, when you're young, like to a younger person, is absolutely fine, key, blah, blah, blah. But then I also kind of think, as people get older and they've got more kind of, not more set in their ways, but a more traditional approach, and I think actually it's going to be harder to do. But yeah.
Oh yeah, it is not easy, and so you don't have to go OTT, but I think just opening that door a little is hugely beneficial, because there's not many people that are doing it.
No.
Everybody else is producing the same sort of style of, very corporate, quite dry, saying the same things, just insert different name here, content. And I think that the other benefit to it is it opens the door. It makes you more approachable, and it gives people like an entry point if they've seen something that that they can relate to. It opens up those conversations in a different way to just putting out the straightforward news.
But yeah,
sorry,
go for it.
No, I was just going to say we're nearly at time. We've got.
We are. We don't have any questions, do we? I haven't seen any questions.
No, Ruth's made a very good point. I think people are starting to realise that audiences want to be able to relate to a company or person. That means writing in a more conversational and engaging way. Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah,
completely agree. Yeah, because it's companies are the people. It's not, you know, the corporate brand is one thing, but actually it's
companies
the people.
are made up of people. They are.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you've liked what you've heard today, then you can definitely connect with both Stacey and I on LinkedIn, surprisingly. We're there most
And Blue
days.
Sky. We're both on Blue Sky now as well.
And Fred's. And I'm on Instagram, you're not. I'm basically everywhere. Yes, so that's fantastic. And thank you very much for joining us.
Yes.
A replay of this will be available on both our profiles coming up. So please do share anything you've learned, and if you've enjoyed the session, share it with others, please. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. Take care.
Thank you. We'll be back in February.